All right, everybody, we're going to get started. Welcome. I'm Jim Miner from Hennepin County Medical Center. Thanks for coming to our session, joined by Anya and Marc. We're all going to be talking here about dealing with our bosses. We all have a lot of bosses. So it's part of academics, right? So I'm a department chair. And some of the residents in my program are like, why are you giving this lecture? You're the boss yourself. Somebody that works for you should be giving this. Well, I report to the dean, I report to the CMO, I report to the hospital CEO. I've got like 7 or 8 bosses. It seems like you get more bosses as you go through. But we all have a lot of people we have to report to in our work. And sometimes they can make your career, and sometimes they can get in your way. And sometimes the one that makes your career and the ones that gets in your way are the exact same person on a bad day or a good day. And one of the things we can do to make our career work better is to figure out where they're at, figure out what the strengths are, and kind of move them forward. Sometimes your boss tells you stuff you didn't want to hear. And every now and then it's because you're getting really good advice and a hard truth about your biggest shortcoming. And sometimes it's because they're not expressing themselves well and they're trying to get your attention, and they're using the fact that you might pay attention to it because you're looking for that hard truth that's going to make you a better person and driving you to get something in a non-productive fashion. So we're going to talk about that, the non-productive advice that we know isn't meant to really help us, that we can get them off of, to get them where we need them, where they're giving us the good advice that helps us. One of the problems we face is somebody asks you what the typical emergency physician is like, what are you going to answer? We're like the most different group of people, almost by definition, that could possibly be. 1 million different personality types can be happy in emergency medicine. 1 million different ways of responding to stress. And some of us change constantly as we go, right? We're in one of the most stressful industries there can possibly be. And we have a lot of different ways of managing it. So we have to have a lot of different strategies for how to deal with people. We can't just say this is what you do. So we can't give you one solution. But we can talk about how to figure out what's going on. So think about the last 5 times someone you report to didn't go well while I'm talking for the next few minutes, and see if you can start to figure out what was about it that didn't go well. And when I'd like to look at things like this, we'd like to try to break it down into different kinds of problems. Not because the world's that simple where everything can be defined as 20 different personality disease states, but just kind of like you learn how to intubate before you have a sick patient, and the real question then is, when do you need to do it? You learn how to manage a bad situation before it happens, and then all you have to do is identify when you need to pull out those management skills, right? So that's what we're going to try to talk about today, is just what do you need to know beforehand, so when you get into these, you can look and you can figure out where you're at and decide what to do. When you're having an interaction, sometimes you have to really look. And it's not what someone's talking about, it's not how it makes you feel, and that's hard, right? When somebody's saying something to you that makes you upset, all you're thinking about is, this person's hurting my feelings, this person's making me feel bad, this person's talking about something that has nothing to do with me. What you need to do is listen to how they're saying it and what they're talking about, and plan your response based on that, not on how you feel about what they're saying. You have to kind of push aside how you feel about what they're saying just for a second to think about what you're hearing, and to try to figure out where to go. Because if you go straight to how this is affecting you and respond on that, a lot of times you're going to make that behavior worse. So we're going to talk about 2 essential skills. The first is blending. It's getting people to like you and figuring out what they want. Right? So you've got to do that first. The second is redirecting, where you take someone and you pull them back where you want them to be when they're not acting in a way you want them to. The order you do this is really important, and that's what we're going to talk about quite a bit here. If you try to redirect somebody before you blend and they don't recognize that you're hearing what they're saying, they're actually going to escalate. And if we watched videotapes of bad interactions, which I've done, but it's part of my job, we videotape everything that happens in our critical care area, and I've for years had to watch all the bad interactions, and this is where a lot of this started coming to from me, where one person would do one thing and the other person would respond in exactly the worst way possible to trigger it, because it would make the first person think they didn't hear what they were saying or didn't understand their worry, and it would just explode. So what you need to do is figure out what they're trying to say, blend with it, and then redirect them to the right direction. 2 things you're looking for. The first is their assertiveness. Are they being passive? Are they being aggressive? You pick this up by vocal tone, eye contact, body posture. Passive is like this, right? They're looking at the floor, they're pulling away from you, they're not opening up their body to you, and you want to reflect those behaviors back. Aggressive is they're opening up their body, they have the power stance, making eye contact, assertive tone. They want to see that back. That they know that you understand they're being assertive. And you want to watch that and not even worry about what the words are. Worry about the tone and the body language. And then what are they focused on? Are they focused on a task? Or are they focused on people? You figure that out by just listening to the content. Not worrying too much about what they're talking about, but are they talking about themselves or other people? Or are they talking about a task that needs to be done? Sometimes it's hard, but you have to just really kind of pay attention. This is kind of the difficult part. So are they worried about how this is making them look, how other people are thinking, or how everyone's getting along, or what everyone's doing? Or are they worried about getting something done, or what they are doing, or if what they're doing is going well? Sort those two things out, because you need to reflect it back at them. Puts us into a spectrum. So here's a little, that looks like an egg, doesn't it? We'll call it the egg of cooperation. There's the cooperation zone where somebody's acting in a way that acts normally. We're all there all the time. Every one of us is aggressive and passive based on what's needed at a moment. Every one of us can be task-focused or people-focused. Part of emergency medicine, right? We deal with people, we do a lot of tasks. We all switch back and forth between these things constantly. When somebody moves out of this cooperation zone is when they get hard to deal with. And that's what we're going to kind of try to talk about. A big overview, when you look at this, if you look at a task-focused person who has an aggressive stance, usually they want to get something done. And you want to reflect that you acknowledge that they want to get something done first before you try to redirect them back to a cooperative area. If they're being aggressive and they're focused on people, they probably want to get appreciated. They want to get told they're doing a good job, that you like them, that it's all okay. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for getting it done. If they're being passive and people-focused, they probably want to get along. They want to say, I like you. This is great. But that's how you're going to blend with them. And if they're being passive and task-focused, they probably want to get something done perfectly right. And then they want to hear that you're going to get it done perfectly right, and you understand that's what they want. So that's kind of a general overview of what we're looking at today. I'm going to hand it off for our first example.
All right. So we're going to try to put this theory to like more concrete and practice. Like, how do you apply this with the different scenarios and different types of behavior? So we have a case here. It's the case of the resident who is setting up for the central line and the attending who kind of shoves them out of the way because they're taking too long and the central line just needs to get done. You can probably think of actual like real examples from your own experiences of similar situations, right? If you were the resident in this case, how would you address this attending? Any ideas?
Feel free to chime in. Right?
Yeah, and you can use the microphone too, or you can just, I'll repeat it. Well, let me ask you this. Do you think this attending is passive or aggressive? Aggressive, right? So on that level, on the assertiveness scale, this person is aggressive. So you're over here on that egg. Do you think this person is being task-focused or people-focused? Right? They want to get the task done. So on that egg, you are on a task-focused and you are on an aggressive scale. And there's a couple of characters that live in that area, right? So if you look at that top right quadrant, we're going to talk about some common like behavior patterns and how to deal with them, all right? The first one is the tank. The tank is really scary. They latch that aggressiveness onto you. There could be like another 50 people in that meeting, but once they are set on target and the target is you, they will unleash and they will move you out of the way so they can get the central line done, right? It can be really hard in the moment to realize that the tank, that type of behavior is actually task-focused because you have all this anger coming at you, and it's really hard not to take it personally. But if you take a moment to realize that their focus is actually on the task and it's not personal, then you can actually take control of that situation and divert it the way you need it to go. okay? So, aggressive, the tank is aggressive and it's task-focused. Remember that. So we talked about the strategy of blending and then redirecting. To blend means to find some common ground. And it can be really difficult to find common ground with somebody that's coming at you like a tank. The easiest place to find that common ground is on that intention, that task. You know what they want, and you kind of have to meet them there. So in the case of that attending, you could say something, yes, I understand we need to get this central line done quickly, right? You understand their motive, and you understand what they're trying to do, and you understand that they're focused on that task and getting it done quickly. And now that you have them on a common ground and an understanding or a report, you have their attention, you can try to redirect it. And now you can use like a more calm voice. So you could say something like we said, you blend. Yes, I understand that you need the central line done quickly. However, if I take my time to set up, I can actually place the line in half the time. So I got this. So you blend it, you brought that attention in, you validated their point, and then you redirect it to where you need it to go. So usually, for a task-oriented person, when you're like way outside that egg and now you're a tank, you want to bring them in the center of that egg. So you want to bring them toward like a more people-focused place. But you have to meet them in that task. You have to meet them in that focus. That is the easiest way to find that common ground and do the blending. And that's true for almost every example that we're going to have today. Is everybody with me? All right. Let's talk about the next character, the sniper. So I think looking at all of you, you've all been in meetings, and I'm pretty sure you have witnessed a sniper in action. So the sniper is that person that when you're presenting, they're doing like an eye roll, just enough to kind of get everybody's attention and just ruin it for you. Or you're kind of talking in the meeting and they kind of like make a stab that is very well directed at you and it really brings you down, and that's usually done in front of a crowd, right? So they hit you, they hide their hand. The sniper can be attention-focused or task-focused. We're going to talk about the attention-focused sniper 2.0 down the road. This is the task-focused sniper that I want to bring your attention to in the beginning, okay? How does, if any of you has any like military experience or like me has watched military movies, the only way to deal with the sniper is to find out where they are, right? The sniper's biggest defense is their location being hidden, right? If the enemy knows where the sniper is hiding, they can get to them. So they stay as hidden as they can, and then they hit the target. So you have to bring the sniper out. You have to understand the sniper's focus. You have to know what task it is that they are focused on, so you can then blend and then redirect. Does that make sense? Any ideas on how to bring the sniper out of hiding? There's two types of questions that you can ask. One is about intent, right? Like, can you tell me like why you're saying this? Like, or what do you mean when you're saying this? Right? Let's just take an example. You're in a budget meeting, you're presenting, and then the sniper just makes a comment about your shoes, right? This is random, but just bear with me here. You may need to stop what you're doing because that's so interruptive, right? You may need to stop what you're doing and try to bring the sniper out of hiding so you can move on. Otherwise, you may get more hits throughout the meeting. So you could ask as to, may I understand, can you explain what you mean when you said that? And they're going to answer, oh, it's a joke. You kind of continue with the same pattern of questions to try to get the sniper out of hiding. The other type of question you could ask is about relevance. So you could be, can you tell me how that shoe comment is relevant to our budget meeting right now? And usually you'll have them at that. If they say, oh, it was just a joke, like they usually do, then you can say, can you tell me how that joke is relevant to the meeting about the budget that we're having right now, right? So you bring them out of hiding until they tell you their intention or what their task is, and then again, you kind of meet them at that task to blend, and then you redirect their focus. All with me so far? All right. This brings me to the next character that you will find in that top quadrant. Another task-focused, aggressive type of behavior, the know-it-all. None of us have made it in medicine this far without having worked with a know-it-all. And the thing about the know-it-all is that they actually know it all. So they know a lot about a lot. And the difficulty becomes when you are trying to introduce a new idea or you're trying to change the course or the plan that they already have. When they already have a lot of knowledge about it and it has already worked well in the past, right? That is very difficult. Again, remember that this is a task-focused, aggressive person. So you have to maintain your own assertiveness and you have to figure out what that task is. So you can kind of blend and meet them with that goal and then kind of redirect them and just open their mind to your idea. All with me so far? All right. Now we're going to keep moving to that other quadrant in the egg with another example, and I'm going to pass it on to my next speaker.
Okay, I'm here to present case 2, and while this one might sound a little bit extreme, I think many of us recall similar instances where it feels almost like an attack in the midst of people who are all working to try to get something accomplished, and somebody comes in with a kind of aggressive attack that has a blaming quality. So in this case, which is using a gunshot wound, and we have a very serious critical situation, thoracotomy is being performed, and the physician asks for 1-0 suture. But it just happens that 1-0 suture is not available, and so we have O suture and 2-0 suture. But with all of the bleeding going on and the stress of the situation, that attending barks out something along the lines of, you're killing the patient, or we're killing the patient because you don't have the proper suture, 1-0 suture. And when this happens in a critical situation, it's almost hard to know what or how to respond, because you've got right in front of you something that has to be done quickly, timely. It could be a life-dependent situation, as in this case, or something that certainly could have serious consequences if not done well. So you have to kind of realize this is, again, aggression. You're on that aggressive side. Someone's coming at you aggressively. But now they seem to be attacking the person rather than a task. So they're falling into the quadrant of kind of aggression and people. And to do that, you have to think about how, can I blend? How can I somehow address this? And yet there's still a task at hand that needs to be done. So here are some of the personality, communication types that you could encounter in this aggressive kind of people area of the quadrant. What we're calling the grenade, the sniper, and the think they know it all, and sometimes the martyr falls into this area. So there are these approaches or characters, if you will, that come up in this situation. And when you have something like a person exploding and putting blame out there, it's almost like they can't even help themselves, and they may even be responding themselves in a certain emotional way that if you go back at them emotionally, it escalates and deteriorates even more. So it may be best to acknowledge them in some way and blend by saying, I'm just as concerned as you are that we don't have the exact suture. But right now, with what we've got to get done, it's not so much about resources, it's about being resourceful. That's why we're emergency physicians. Let's work together to get this done because we've got a critical situation here. And after that, let's also work together because I know you care about having the right equipment. And I appreciate that matters to you. Let's work together so this doesn't happen in the future. So you've kind of blended and redirected back towards the task because there is an important task that needs to be done, and this right in the moment is not the time to further deteriorate emotionally when there's something critical that has to get done. And sometimes it may not be a specific task like this, but it could be something with regard to consultation where someone comes back at you in a very aggressive way and you really need to get something done. So it's like, well, let's get the patient care done that we need to get done. I appreciate where you're coming from. We didn't have that Foley catheter that you were looking for in the exact size that you wanted or something like that, and just try to redirect back once you've created the blending. And the think they know it all is interesting because they don't necessarily know it all, but they will let you know that they know it all. As the phrase sometimes goes, sometimes or often wrong, never in doubt. And so people kind of come across with this superiority, and they may even be distracting and moving you in the wrong direction because their idea is not really on target. But to blend back in by acknowledging that they have a commitment or that they are participating at a high level, that they're engaged, and then redirect back to what needs to be done and be sure the details of that are going to be done correctly, and just try to get them off of the kind of I know this to let's look at the details of what has to get solved and see if you can redirect them back. And we mentioned just a little bit earlier the sniper, but this is also a sniper more in that people-focused quadrant. And so they actually want some kind of acknowledgement often that in the moment is very important. And, I just want to also say in general, with all of these approaches, we're dealing with what needs to be done in the moment so things don't deteriorate further, or that, I was mentioned earlier, if you're responding emotionally and then pouring that emotion into it, that tends to create way more drama, deterioration of the team if the team is engaged in working together. And there may be a time to address these behaviors later by setting up a conversation, sometimes even with a mediator if necessary. But right in the moment is not when you want to deteriorate and respond out of a feeling of, oh, I'm under attack, so I'll attack back with some level of emotion that's going to somehow, contain this, what's coming at me. So here, again, by giving them some form of acknowledgement, and being able to say, I appreciate how much you care about the outcome here, or that you care about things get done right. But right now, let's focus on the task at hand and then see how we can put the equipment together or make sure we don't get that happening in the future by redesigning the airway box or whatever is the issue at hand in the moment. And then the martyr situation, and this can occur outside of emergency medicine. I'm sure many people have come across this particular situation where whether you want help or not, when you get it, it kind of comes with a price tag and some type of reminder that what they're doing is either at some sort of sacrifice or somehow kind of, in that quadrant of it's an aggressive kind of, more of a subtle aggressive, but it's coming at you, people-focused. And they, again, are looking for some sort of acknowledgement, something that lets them feel appreciated for who they are. And when you can get that done, then you can redirect back to the tasks. So by thinking about what is this person really, what's behind, what's driving this behavior that could feel offensive, that could feel highly critical, that could feel painful even. If I can, in the moment, understand what's driving this, I can blend and redirect back. Okay, I'm going to pause here for case 3.
All right, let's do another example. Let's assume that you are the research director for your department. You're having a research meeting, and everybody's contributing except for your department chair, who is just kind of looking at their shoes and nodding along and basically not saying anything. How would you deal with this department chair? Do you think they're being aggressive or passive? Passive. Do you think they're task-focused or people-focused? That's a tough question, right? Because if, we're moving along this egg, and we're now down here in the people-focused passive section, but the example I just gave you is the nothing person. The nothing person could potentially be task-focused or people-focused. You just don't know because they are giving you nothing, because they're the nothing person. If they are not talking, you really have, and they're passive, you really have like no way of knowing where they are on that spectrum. And if you do not know what their intent is and what their focus is, it's going to be really hard for you to blend and meet them there to try and get them, to where you want them to go. Does that make sense? So basically, you have to get the nothing person to talk. And because they're on that passive side, you have to make sure that you create like an environment where that person knows that it's safe to talk, and assure them that everybody's getting along. So for our example with the meeting, you could say something, hey everybody, this meeting is going even better than expected. I appreciate how everybody is getting so well along, and I appreciate all your input, but I really want to make sure that we do not end this meeting without everyone's input. So Mr. Chair or Mrs. Chair, can you please tell us what your thoughts are on this? So you divert that passiveness or that people focus into the task at hand, which is you needing to know what they're thinking and where they're coming from. The more they start talking, the more you can understand their motivation, and then you can kind of rise up to meet them at that level, at that intent, and then divert their behavior to where you need it to be. Does that make sense? So another character you're likely to find in that quadrant there. So it's a passive, people-focused type of behavior. That's the yes person. We have all met the yes person. We have sometimes been the yes person. This is the one that overpromises but underdelivers. They just don't want to upset anybody, never say no, and then there's no way they can get all those tasks done. So because they have that people focus, you have to make sure you blend by reassuring them that everything is fine, we're still getting along, even though the task was not complete, and then you redirect them to trying to get commitment on something that they can actually deliver. So you redirect them from that people, I don't want to upset anybody, to the task at hand in terms of saying yes to the things that can actually get done. And the maybe person, I'm sure we have all met the maybe person as well. This is the indecisive boss. They just cannot decide, and enough time goes by that either the decision gets made for them or nothing really gets decided and things kind of fall out of whack. So maybe this is the chair who has to send either you or your colleague to a conference in Hawaii. But the chair kind of likes both of you, and they can't decide who's going. And, if they end up picking you, you need time to tell your family that you're going to Hawaii without them. You need time to book your flights, make sure you have a room with a view, tell the scheduler that you're going to be gone. These things require time, so the chair dragging their feet and not picking somebody can be really frustrating. And sometimes just knowing gives you that peace, So how do you deal with a maybe indecisive person. You need to make sure that they know it's okay to pick a side and make a decision. So I could go like, hey, Jim, I know both Mark and I are in the running for that Hawaii trip. I know you really like both of us. We've talked about it, and neither of us is going to have hard feelings no matter who you pick, right? So you're blending. And then you go, you redirect to the task. You go, but we really need you to pick somebody by the end of the week so we can make arrangements for our trip, right? So you bring that from that people focus to the task at hand. But unless you meet them halfway and you meet them on that focus and you blend first, you cannot redirect. Again, that is very important. If you do not meet them where they are to blend and create that rapport, the common ground, you cannot redirect anyone's behavior. All right, one more example.
So now we have another case, and just to read that, you designed a fast-track area for your department at the request of the hospital administration in an effort to try to alleviate overflowing lobby volume. The faculty has been asked to staff the area until an alternate plan can be made. However, the medical director of your department has been very vocal to others in their objection to the staffing of the area, bringing scheduling issues, overtime complaints, and any other negative aspect that they can think of into the conversation. So there's something that needs to get done. It's a difficult situation to begin with, and the solution may not be ideal, or all of the components of the solution may not be immediately clear, but getting started is important. And we've probably all been in some type of assignment where it would be nice to have all the elements perfectly ready to go before we started, but we might never get off the ground if we didn't take some type of initial step with what we have. And I think when you look at innovation in the world, you have to have a balance between getting the resources and equipment that you need and also getting started. There's an old Zen phrase that says, leap and the net will appear. So necessity is the mother of invention. And you can't just leap and have no clue about how the net is going to appear. But sometimes you're going to be tasked with getting started. And if you have someone in that environment who is kind of a naysayer, making it impossible to get off the ground, you sort of have a dilemma. And in that regard, we're back in this area here where it's more of a kind of has to be perfection before we get going. You're going to find people showing up who are judging and evaluating without necessarily offering help. Someone who's kind of complaining about it, whining, just not having a solution. The naysayer, someone just seems to just be saying no, and the meddler or sometimes micromanager who isn't really getting the job done but seems to want to manage every detail of everything you've been asked to do. And it's very difficult to work in a setting where you've been asked to be creative in some way or innovative or bring something forward and then have it micromanaged every step of the way by someone else. So how do we deal with this? Well, again, going back to that concept of first understanding where that's coming from and how can I blend with that initially. In the case of somebody who's whining or complaining, the phrase, there's a plan in their lives, but they're not in it. Or maybe you've heard this phrase that goes something like, there are people who watch what's going on, and there are people who wonder what happened. There are people who are making it happen. There are people who are watching what happened, and there are people who are like, what happened? And so, you have to bring people back by acknowledging the importance of the task and blending with the need to get started and give them some encouragement or some positive attention and a way in which they can feel valued. so that they won't feel somehow unappreciated in the launching of this effort. But you have to bring it back to the encouragement to take action after you've blended. And then with the naysayer, it's a very complicated kind of emotion because you feel invalidated, you feel pressure that if we don't get started, maybe there'll be some blame coming down the pike if the project isn't moved forward. But you have to blend again by getting back to the task at hand and appreciating perfection, and even acknowledging someone for saying, I really get how important it is that you want to have this done right. We all want that to happen. But if we don't get started and then treat this somewhat as a work in progress where we can refine and modify, we won't get off the ground at all. And we've been tasked with something very important where we have to take action. So if you use something positive in there and you blend initially by acknowledging the need to get it done right, so that this person, it's kind of disarming when you agree with, in a sense, what they're upset about, and you kind of give them that validation. Then you can redirect. And again, with the judge, it's a kind of thing where someone is judging and evaluating, but it's almost like on the sidelines. So they're kind of, in the Monday morning quarterback, so to speak, or the person in the stadium. And I think you, again, have to focus them back by acknowledging the importance of the task, and don't let the judgment define you or stop you from moving forward, and again, using a positive, enthusiastic approach so that despite the judgments, the enterprise, the project is going to move forward. And this is one of the most common difficult boss behaviors. We mentioned earlier the people who are going to micromanage everything you do, but you can blend with acknowledging the importance of the task and focusing that back, redirecting, indicating approval and that you are capable of getting this done. It was almost a little bit like the central line example, where it's like acknowledging, hey, I really get how important speed is here, but a few minutes that I'm taking now are going to save me a lot more time on the back end, and we will get this done promptly. Or really acknowledging somebody and saying, you hired me because I'm the person who can get this job done. And I want you to know I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to get it done so you look good in the process, because you hired me, and I'm here to make sure things go well for you too. And when you say that, you can kind of let somebody step back a little bit and take a breath so that they're not worried that if you don't get it done, some blame's going to splash all over them.
All right, so what if the problem is you? It's happened, right? We're not all perfect every day. We try, right? What if it's you? We've all had days when we're that person. You can feel it coming, right? Because the energy's going up and you're the one that started it, right? It's getting uncomfortable. We all can feel it. You feel it in your stomach, you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your throat sometimes. Bad place, not where you want to be. Your body's hardwired to not want to have a conflicting relationship with anyone. But if it's starting after you said something, you're probably the cause of it. So think about where you are on the spectrum. Am I feeling aggressive right now? Am I feeling like I want to pull back? Am I worried about this thing we're talking about? Am I worried about how this group's getting along or what people think of me or what's going on here? Think about that and adjust yourself. And if you're like, I'm worried everyone thinks I'm an idiot, you're on the people end and you need to go back to the task. Wait, we're just here to talk about this research project, or we're just here to talk about this thing we're meeting about. If you're keep interrupting people because you don't think they have an idea to fix the task, pull back and say, hey, this is a great group, I'm glad we're here. Let's make sure that we've got this task under control. But make sure that you're thinking about yourself and not just thinking it might be someone else in the room. I know for me, it ends up being me more often than not, but whatever. That's life, right? So what do? This is just a general summary of what we're talking about here. It's not going to be the same person it's the same thing for every single person. For me, the boss I report to the most is CMO of our hospital. And when he's feeling insecure, he's a maybe person. And when he's worried that I'm not going to get something done because it's really important, he's a meddler. And I got to quickly figure out, because if I go in when he's feeling like meddler and saying, you're a good boss, you're doing a good job, then he freaks out that I'm not worried about the task. If I go in when he's feeling insecure and say, I've got this, then he's worried about that I don't like him. So, right, so you have to figure out. When he's being maybe-ish, I say, you're really good at this, and we just need you to pick something. I'm going to back you up and do a good job no matter what. You just tell me which one you want me to work on, and I'm going to work on it. And he's fine. He makes his decision. When he calls me like 6 times in a day to ask how something's going, I say, thank you so much for putting me in charge of this, and I know you're worried about it. It's super important. I'm going to get it done. But I got to switch, right, based on what's going on. So identify their positive intent. Identify what they want that's good. Look for what they have value in, and think about your tone of voice. You always want to match it. So sometimes you need an aggressive tone. If you get a passive tone with somebody who's feeling aggressive, they're going to get more aggressive because they don't think you understand the urgency in their task, right? Doesn't mean you need to yell at them. You might. But if you speak very clearly, make eye contact, step forward, and use a precise tone, that's as aggressive as you need to be. And most people won't find that offensive, right? And if they're feeling passive, and if you do that, they're going to back up even more. So just kind of read that situation. And sometimes you're going to be wrong, and you can tell because they're going to go in the wrong direction. You'll be like, oop, I misread this. I got to back up. I got to go the other way. So you really want to be on your toes. The best way to do that is to not get lost in your own head. Don't start thinking about how they're making you feel, how this is going, this is making you angry. Get out of that and take control of the situation and think about what you can do to change this moment. And you can go back and reflect on how it made you feel later, but if you get lost in that in the moment, you just end up standing there and later you're like, oh, I should have done this, and I just let that happen. We've all been there. And the way to avoid that is to not get sucked into it. Tell your own truth and be ready to listen. Think about what really is important to you here too. You can't fake it. If somebody's really worried about a task and getting it done, and you think the most important thing is keeping the group happy, you just need to say, I understand you're worried about this task, but the main reason we're here is for this group to exist. Or if all they're worried about is the group getting along, saying, look, I want us to all get along, but we need to finish this thing. It's the only reason we're gathering right now. Like, you need to realize you can't make it up. So you have to acknowledge what you're really worried about. So here it all is, everything you need to know about how to get along with everyone forever. Now, it seems like really confusing, but if you just think about it, most of us exist in that cooperation zone all the time. And just, are we trying to get it right? Are we trying to get it done? Are we trying to get appreciated? Are we trying to get along? We all have all those needs. And your boss that you report to is going to have those needs just like anyone else is. And you can figure out where they're at and pull them in just by acknowledging what it is. And your people you report to, and a lot of you probably have people who report to you, they worry about what you think about them. So that's where a lot of us get lost. We think that they're the boss. They don't care what we think of them. They just worry about the tasks. So a lot of times what we under-acknowledge as a group, as people that report to somebody, is when they're doing nothing or yes or maybe or being a martyr or think they know it all or sniping us with stupid comments, blowing up, losing their temper. They're worried about what you think of them. They're not worried about what work's getting done. And that's normal human existence, and they want to feel validated. And if you don't do that, you might, your relationship will be impaired. So a couple quick reviews. When somebody becomes controlling, it's because they're trying to get it done. So watch. So this is the easy ways to find these, right? They're starting to control the situation and get more aggressive. They want to get it done. So figure out what they want to get done and tell them, I want to get that done too. When somebody gets really perfectionistic, so they start whining about something not being right or just saying no to whatever you say or saying it's not right or this is wrong or just kind of disengaging, they're worried about getting it right. And you just want to say, I want this to be perfect too. I understand it's to be perfect, but for today we're going to have imperfect and we're going to get there, but I know what you want. When they're controlling and perfectionists, it's meddlers. Now this is the one we see the most in bosses. So you've all seen this, right? Where you're just getting micromanaged. It's just incredibly common in a boss. If you get this, they've asked you to do something and it'll look bad for them if it doesn't get done right. And so instead of helping you, they're micromanaging you. And they're trying to do it to be good at being a boss. They think they're supporting you. So at some point you just have to say, hey, you picked me, like Marc was saying, right? You picked me because you're a great boss. You got the right person on the job. I've got this. I know you want it done right. I'll call you in 2 weeks when it's done perfectly because I guarantee you'll be there. If I need anything before then, I'll let you know. If you say back off or you're irritating me, it'll just get worse. So you have to go right to the task because that's what they're worried about. They don't actually distrust you. They're not, they just really worried about this task because it's going to reflect on them and it's in your hands. When they get more approval seeking, they want to get along. So that's somebody who says yes to everything, someone who can't make up their mind. And yes and can't make up their mind are the same thing. They're saying yes to everything because they don't want anyone to get mad at them because they said no. They won't make up their mind because they're worried that you'll get mad if they pick the wrong decision. So both of them, you just have to say, it's okay. I need you to tell me which of these things you can't do. If you can't help me with this, just let me know now. Or just pick one because I just need something. I need to know what I'm supposed to be doing and you haven't said. I won't get mad, I promise. Nothing people is another big one. Especially if whoever you report to, whoever's in charge, isn't entirely comfortable. So say you're a research director and you know a ton about research, and you're the person running your meeting, their background was in residency direction or operations. They're going to be uncomfortable. You need to make it okay, just saying you just need to pick it, you control the budget, or vice versa, right? They were a researcher, they've never done operations. You're presenting a business plan to them and they won't answer. You have to say, look, I've got these numbers right, I just need you to decide if you want to go this way or that way, or help me, or just tell me to pick for you, but we need to make it. You just need to make them know that they're going to get along and you're going to like them and you're going to think they're good at their job, no matter how they do it. When people get more attention seeking, or people get more attention seeking when their ability to get appreciated is sorted. This is when somebody just wants to be told they're smart and they do a good job. And this can be very different looking things. A grenade is somebody who just blows up. A lot of times when somebody blows up, you got to differentiate. The tank gets controlling. They start harping on everything and get right in there. A grenade just like loses it and just blows their temper. It's important for you to be able to recognize which one, because the tank wants you to say, we got this task, it's okay, we're going to help you. The grenade just wants to say, I'm sorry you're frustrated because everyone thinks you're really good at your job and we didn't mean to frustrate you. You just have to acknowledge that they just want to be told they're okay. And that's why they're blowing up. The think they know it all, how do you differentiate that from a know-it-all? Exaggeration. So think they know it all is going to be bragging. And when people brag, they tend to say stuff that isn't absolutely true. An actual know-it-all that's trying to block you and get you on a task will actually say, we can't do this today because it's this, and they'll give you actual things that are in the way. Think they know it all, they're just bragging. You can all pick that up. We've all learned that. In elementary school, we learned what bragging sounded like. So you hear them bragging, they just want attention. I know you're smart. I know you've been doing this for 30 years, and I really appreciate all that experience. Snipers, you can pick them out if they're going for the task or person based on that. So if they're exaggerating or saying something that's not true, they want attention. Just say, hey, thanks, I see you back there. Everyone knows that you did this research first and I'm doing it now. Or everyone knows that you used to be in charge of this committee and now I'm the new person in charge. Thanks for the great leadership 25 years ago. Now be quiet. And then, but if they're focused on the task, they're worried you're not going to be focused and saying, I understand that we really need to work on this. Don't interrupt again. But start with, I understand you when they want the task, right? So when somebody wants to get appreciated and get along, they become the martyr. This tends to, we've all seen this almost as much as the meddler, but this is when they want to be told that everyone appreciates the work they've done. Everybody hates me, no one shows up for work, everybody's lazy now, this whole new generation of doctors can't do their job. We've all heard it, right? Just say, and you do a great job, and we're also happy to have you to lead us. Thank you, we like you a lot. And they'll usually come out of it. The short version of a lot. What kind of questions do you guys have? I can see some burning ones out there. But you're worried we won't approve of your statement, and you're feeling passive. Come on up and say something. It'll be okay. See how I opened up my body? I made eye contact with Dr. Usher, said she's got an idea on her mind. It's okay. You don't have to come up. We're near the end, but thank you so much for joining us, everybody. It's great to be here.
Since we have a couple... so helpful in the work arena, I've actually found useful in my personal life, and I will give you an example. So I'm married, I'm remarried, but I was divorced. We have a daughter together, and this is 25 years ago. She was very young at the time, our daughter. And of course, there was a lot of parenting that had to get done. And I felt like this micromanaging that my daughter's mom was, telling me how to do this, how to do that, how to do this, and I was reacting pretty emotionally because I'm a doctor, I know how to change a diaper, and I know how to do that. What do you mean I do this for a living, And of course, the more I kind of came back at it, the more micromanaging, it actually got louder. And I don't know, one day I had an epiphany I didn't have this diagram at that time, but I started acknowledging her for being a terrific mom and having concerns that were like, that's what a mom would have, concerns. Now, I didn't hear them as concerns, I heard them as micromanaging and criticism. But as soon as I shifted it, and I said, I really appreciate your input and what a great mom you are, and that your concerns matter, guess what happened to all the micromanagement? It actually disappeared. It was like crazy, it went away. And of course, our relationship improved, and and our daughter's grown up, and everything is fine. But that shift on my side, again, sometimes when it's you, so to speak, I was contributing without even realizing it, because I was kind of making things worse by coming back at it. There.
Hi, Jim.
Dr. Cole?
Given what's gone on in the world for the past approximately 7 years, I'm curious, because you didn't talk about this in the talk, what is your advice about gaslighting, both when it's happening to you and when someone you are supervising is engaging in it?
Well, we probably should have included gaslighting as a group, because it generally falls into a couple of these different categories. So a lot of times when somebody is gaslighting you, they're just telling you, I never said that, or you never, they're just, so there's something isn't true, and they're trying to tell you that it is true. That's either they think they know it all, so they're trying to get appreciated, they want to be told they're important, or it's the judge. But it's usually either a passive perfectionist or somebody who's looking to get appreciated. Now there's massively pathological ends of this. But in the normal interaction rate, I find when somebody's doing that to me, either they're worried I'm not going to get something done right, or they want to get told how great they are. In our group, we have what I see the most at work is they want to get appreciated. So they just say stuff I know it isn't true, and if I call them out on it, it gets a million times worse. And I would just say, you're right, you know so much about this, thank you so much. And I just say how much I appreciate them, kind of like Marc was just saying, it just goes away. But I think when we see it on a massive scale, it's harder. But on the individual scale, it's upper left or lower right on this scale. More so than they're not trying to force anything, because the tank would just tell you, no, it's this, just do what I want. And I think getting the difference, how do you know if it's a think they know it all or a judge, is based on, are they looking at the ground saying, no, that never happened? And then they're worried about the task. And you're like, and then if they're looking right at you and yelling it at you, then they want to be told how important they are. Thanks, John. All right. Thanks, everybody. Sorry, I ended this too early.